correct? So if I want to ace number properties, then the obvious things that I need to complete is the basics of number properties, right? That is even, odd, primes, LCM, GCD, divisibility, units, digit, and statistics. So this is something which everybody understands. Hey, you're studying number properties, so you need to do these things to do well in number properties. But I have a slightly different opinion. I feel, yes, it's very obvious that you need to do these things, but there are certain not so obvious things that you need to do, you need to know to be able to ace number properties. And to help you understand that, let me tell you a bit about, let me talk about a verbal a bit. Okay. So when you're preparing for a verbal, what do? You usually start off with sentence correction, right? Then you jump into critical reasoning, and then you reading comprehension. So the course progression in verbal is very linear. It's a progressive flow. You go from sentence to CR to RC, right? However, in quant, it's not like that. In quant, what happens is that most of the test prep industries, what they do is they tell you to start off with number properties. They ask you to do algebra, then maybe word problem, finally geometry, and whatever miscellaneous topics that are left. That is what they tell you to do. But think about it. I have a few questions for you. Think in this way, that you're, say, studying number properties, and you are dealing with, you started studying prime numbers. And in prime numbers, you come across prime factorization where exponents are involved. Now, if you don't know anything about exponents, will you be able to prime factorize properly or be able to solve it properly? Another few examples could be a case where you're solving divisibility questions, where you deal with equations, right? Linear, simultaneous, or special equations. Now, if you don't know how to deal with them, will you be able to do well in divisibility? Or maybe in statistics also, where you deal with quadratic equations and square roots? Well, the short answer is no, you cannot, right? So the reason is because if you don't know these topics like exponents, special equations, and quadratic square root, there is a chance that you might falter in these kind of questions. So to ace number properties, just having the basic understanding of the other topics is not enough. You need to know the other topics as well. And this is something that no test prep industry points out, or not even students figure this out. Think about it. You might have come across a question where you are dealing of number properties, where you have to use some concept that is something you haven't studied yet, because that will come in the, say, algebra section, but you're studying in number properties now. And because of this also, sometimes you are not able to get that question correct. And you feel that maybe if I did not get that question correct because I'm not good in number properties. However, that is not the case. The case is because you know number properties, but the reason for not doing well is some other topic which you haven't come across yet. So what we believe the right progression to study, and this is again, I'm talking from a general point of view, is not to start off with just one topic, say one module number properties. Ideally, what you should do is that when you're starting your quant preparation, you should start off with the basics first, and that is what we do in our course. What is important is you first of all understand what are numbers. That's a basic thing. You need to know how to, what are the different kind of numbers like positive, negative. You need to be comfortable with fractions, decimals. You need to know how to estimate and round them off. Once you're comfortable with numbers, then what you need to do is you need to do some algebra basics like linear, quadratic inequalities. Because see, linear, quadratic exponents are something that you're going to deal in almost all concepts that you, or all modules that you study, be it word problem, be it geometry, you'll come across it. So it's very important that you get these basics in place first. Okay, so the basics of numbers and how to deal with equations. Then you'll see a lot of questions where they ask you about percentages also, like number properties also. They will ask you to find out a variable, say x and y, and they might ask you how much is, say, x is what percentage more than y, or what is the ratio of x is to y. Now, if you're only studying number properties and you don't know these basics, then you'll again falter because of some other topic which you don't know. Okay, so this is the right way, right progression that you need to study. And only when you have these things in place, then only you should start off with even, odd, primes, LCM, GCD. And here also notice that the progression is very, it's very progressive in nature. So I'm not asking you to study LCM, GCD before primes, because once you know prime factorization, then only will you be able to apply it in LCM, GCD. That's the idea here. Once you know all the equalities, then only we ask you to study inequalities. Okay, then only you should study linear inequalities, quadratic inequalities, and so on and so forth. Once you know percentages, then only you should start with profit and loss and simple and compound interest. Now think about it. If you haven't done algebra you don't know exponents, will you be able to do well in questions which involve compound interest? You won't be able to do it, right? So what we believe is that you should never ever start off with just one number properties or one word problem model and try and complete it. Ideally, you should study in this sequence that we have shown here. Okay, and this is what we tell in our course also. If you go through a free trial, you'll be able to see the sequence in the right sequence that you need to study. But the main point that I'm trying to make here is that to ace number properties, just knowing number properties topic is not enough. You need to make sure that some of the basics that other some of the module that is important must also be clear. Okay, so this is the second thing. The third and the most important thing, which no test prep industry talks about, and no one has even integrated in the system, is what I call the unmentioned. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Look at the statement and tell me how many of you have actually experienced this. How many of you have you solved a question properly? Okay, you know the concept, but you made a silly mistake. How many have come across a situation like this? And I'll give you an example if you're wondering what am I talking about. Say, for example, you've solved a question. Okay, you've done it properly, but after solving the question, instead of marking, say the question was asking for x plus y and not x, but you ended up marking x because that is what you got in your equation. So you did not read properly. And I can see most of you are saying yes here, right? You have this kind of problem, right? You did not read properly or end up making a mistake. Similarly, you might have also come across a situation like this. You've read the whole question, but there's a certain statement which you're not sure how to write an equation of. Like this example, I've seen a lot of students asking me, hey, how do I write an equation for this kind of statement? There are twice as many girls as boys. Do I write it as b is equal to 2g or g is equal to 2b, right? You come across problems like this also. Similarly, one of the other problems that you might come across is something like this. You make a wrong assumption. Say, for example, it's given that x is an integer. Now, what happens is our mind is so used to seeing integers, and we are so used to looking at positive integers only, that we end up considering only positive integers and ignoring zero and negative numbers, right? This is something which all of us have faced, and nobody talks about it. So how should we resolve this issue? And please understand, these unmentioned are something, how do I put it? This unmentioned is something which is not related to any topic. This is something which is more related to, it's an application oriented skill basically, that you need to practice, you need to keep a track of it. Let's say you're making a lot of silly mistakes. How many times are you making it? Where are you making it? What kind of mistakes are you making? Are you missing out a constraint because of which you're not doing well? So the reason I'm saying this, that you need to track it, is because sometimes if you're not doing well in number properties or seeing any topic at all, it could be because that you're making these kind of mistakes, and the problem is not number properties. Okay, and only when you track this will you be able to understand what you need to do to improve. So the skills that you must possess apart from this is that apart from number properties, and the not so obvious is that once you're reading a question, you should be able to come up with pertinent inferences. Now look at the statement and give me an answer in the chat box only. After reading this statement, what comes to your mind about x and y? Read the statement once. Here it's given that x plus y is 31. Both x and y are prime. Just after reading this, what should you be able to infer after reading this statement? Anyone? And what's the thought process of doing it? So I just want to see how you think. Come on, guys, give it a shot. Even if you're wrong, that's totally okay. Okay, Shrinka is saying that x and y can be 2 or any other odd number. PLS is saying one of the number is 2. Sai Pavan is saying we'll search for prime numbers which add up to 31. Okay. And that was one of the comments that I was looking for. What happens is that when we read a question like this, the first thing that we should do is write down what is the constraint that is given to us, that is x plus y are primes. Okay. After that, what you can do is you can jot down all the primes that are less than 31. But keep this in mind that in GMAT, GMAT doesn't ask you to think randomly. You don't need to randomly search for it. You can always, if you look at the numbers, you will be able to come up with something, you'll be able to see some pattern. So look at the numbers that I've written, all the prime numbers that I've written here. I'm sure you'll be able to see that one of the prime numbers stand out in this case, right? And that prime number is basically 2, because 2 here is the only even prime number. So once you see this, you should be able to think in terms, hey, 2 is the only even prime number. The sum that is given to me is odd. So maybe this question is related to even and odd numbers only. And I know that when I add 2 numbers, and if I get odd, one of them must be even, the other must be odd. Now, the moment that you're able to draw this inference, will you be able to get the correct answer? You won't have to search for prime numbers. You don't have to think, hey, it could be 2 or any other prime number. You can directly say, if it is even plus odd, the final sum is 31, then one of the number has to be 2. Because I cannot take 2 odd numbers, add them up and get an odd number. So one of the number is 2 and the other number has to be 29. So if you are able to do this thinking in a process-wise manner, then only will you be able to do well in most of the questions. Some of the other skills that you need to keep in mind is you should be able to write out the correct equation also. So, so this was the example that I took some time back, right? Now, in this case, when you read this statement, you should be able to infer that girls are twice of boys, and we need to write G is equal to 2B. Okay. Another skill that you must possess is that you should be able to jot down all the relevant cases. Some of you tend to miss cases. Like if it is given X is a prime number, a lot of students end up thinking only about odd numbers and they forget about 2. That should not happen. You should be able to think about both even and odd prime numbers. Okay, there are some other skills also, like how to simplify a complex equation, whether how to take numbers to solve the question, and so on and so forth. But the idea that I'm trying to, the point that I'm trying to make here is learn your concepts really well, but make sure that you have these skills with you. If you don't develop these skills, even if you do really well, you will still end up faltering the question. Then you'll keep on wondering, why am I making a mistake? And apart from this, what I believe is that you should make sure that you avoid these kind of common mistakes. Like if you're reading X as an integer and you don't do a proper analysis, you may end up thinking only about, say, positive integers. If you don't read the question properly, you will end up making a mistake, silly mistakes, basically. You should try and avoid C traps, D traps. There are a lot of traps that are set in the GMAT, simple ones. So don't fall for it. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to discuss 8 number properties question with you. Okay. And the idea behind while discussing this question is to tell you how a student makes a mistake. How do you end up making a mistake? And in what way can you avoid them? And how do you track them? Okay. And while discussing the concepts, I'll make sure to while discussing these questions, I'll make sure to discuss the concepts also. So if I feel there's a need to give some background concept, don't worry, I'll give you that so that it helps you understand the solution properly also. But the moment that you are able to apply these concepts and avoid these mistakes, then only, believe me, you'll be able to reach from, say, a Q49 to a Q51. I've seen a lot of students plateau at Q49. They end up asking me questions like, hey, I'm not able to reach Q50. Well, the difference between a Q49 and a Q50 or a Q51 is because of this only. Because people like Q50, Q51, they make sure that they write down everything properly, do proper analysis, and then come up with the answer. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a question in the screen now. I'll give you about 2.5 minutes to solve it, and I'll start a poll also. So you mark your answer in the poll. Please do not write the answer in the chat. That's a request. Please don't do that because I want everyone to solve it. Because if they see the answer in the chat, then the answer will get biased. I don't want that. Okay. So after 2.5 minutes, I'll end the poll and then we'll discuss the question. Okay. So here's the first question on the screen, guys. And I have added the poll also. All the best, guys. Another 15 seconds, guys. Then I'll end the poll. I would strongly encourage all of you to mark the answer. It's okay if even if you get it wrong, that's absolutely fine. But do participate. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. So if anybody wants to mark, just do it very quickly. Okay. So I can see that 33% of you think that the answer should be B. I have a few 22% thinking C, and a surprising 44% of you are saying that the answer should be D. Okay, and none of you chose A or E. So now tell me, what do you think about this question? What is the difficulty level of this question? Is it easy, difficult? What are your thoughts on this question? Type your answer in the chat box, please. Was it tough? Sagnik is saying 600 plus level. Okay, 650. 650 level. Sukanya, okay. Maiti thinks, I think it is easy. Okay, fine. Okay, anyone else? Okay. So I won't tell what the answer is, but I'm going to ask you one or two very simple questions, okay? And so keep in mind that nobody marked A and E, and all of you ended up marking B, C, and D. So my question is, the question statement is very simple, right? Is X plus Y an even number? But do we know that X and Y are integers? Kindly mark yes if you think that we know that X and Y are integers, and no, we do not. In this question, is it anywhere given that X and Y are integers? Yes, no. No. Okay. So you're saying no, right? Good. So another question. Do you think it is possible that we can get an even odd number by adding two decimal numbers? What do you think? Let me bring up the poll again. Just one sec, guys. Can we add two decimals and get an even and odd number? What do you think? Yes, no. Yes, okay. Most of you are saying yes. Okay. Now, the reason I'm asking you this question is because these are the questions that you should have asked yourself. These are the very important questions. If you don't ask yourself, you will end up making a mistake. So once you see the question that is X plus Y an even number, okay, what you need to do is ask yourself, what kind of numbers can X and Y be? Okay. And so you tell me, you can write it down in the chat box. What kind of numbers can X be? Can X and Y only be integers in this case? Do you think? Please type your answer in the chat box. What kind of numbers are X and Y? If nothing is given, what do you do? What do you assume X and Y as? You're saying no, that means they're not only integer fractions also. Yes, so Kenya, you're right. Fractions are also possible. So once you see that nothing has been mentioned, then you should be able to infer that X and Y can be positive or negative or even decimals. And see if you're unsure, if you're not sure whether by taking two decimals you can get an even number or not, you can take a few examples and check whether you can get it or not. And I've written an example, as you can see, 1.2 plus 0.8 can give you 2, right? So if nothing is given in the question, you should always infer that it's a real number, nothing else. And this is the kind of mistake that I'm talking about. When you read the question, all of you, almost all of you, not even almost, in fact, every one of you ended up thinking that X and Y are integers. However, it's quite possible that X and Y could be fractions also. Okay. Now, keeping this inference in mind that they can be fractions as well as integers, you go and analyze each statement. The first statement is 5x plus 4 is an odd number. Okay. Now tell me, do we even need to analyze the statement? Should we analyze the statement? Let me bring up the yes and no poll once. Just one sec. Do we need to analyze the statement? Yes, no. And those who are saying no, can you write in the chat box, why do you think we don't need to analyze the statement? Okay, some of you are saying yes also. So can you just give me a reason? Some of you marked D. So I'm sure those who marked D are saying yes. But why do you think we need to analyze it? No info about why. Swati, you are right. Okay. Yes, Mahiti, yeah. Absolutely correct. See, when you want to find out x plus y is an even number, you need to know something about y also, right? So what you could have done is, you could have simply say that in this statement, using this statement, we'll get to know something about x, but we will not be able to know anything about y, right? And so we'll not be able to know anything about y. It does not make any sense to analyze this statement. And you could have simply said that statement 1 is not sufficient. And since statement 1 is not sufficient, your answer cannot be A or D. Okay, so you could have directly discarded the statement and move on to the next one. However, for the sake of learning purpose, I would want to discuss it now only. Okay, so we are given 5x plus 4 is odd. Okay, and what we can do is we can write it like this, right? Because we know 4 is an even number, and we can take even to the other side and end up writing 5x is equal to even minus odd. Now, what is even minus odd? What do we get when we take one even, one odd? When we subtract it, what do we get? Do we get even or do we get odd? What is even minus odd, guys? It's odd, right? So we know it's odd. Okay. So we can write 5 times x is odd. Now tell me, once you see that 5 times x is odd, what can you infer about x? And I want you to mark it in a poll. So just let me bring up the poll once. Mark your answer in this poll. What can you infer from here about x? If 5 times x is odd, what can you infer about x? And keep in mind the inference that we made in the step 1. We inferred that x and y could be real numbers. They are real numbers, basically. They could be integers as well as fractions. So keeping that in mind, what do you think x is? Okay. So let me end the poll here and show you the result. So all of you said that in this case, if 5x is odd, then x will be odd. You all marked B in this case. And believe me, you all fell for the trap. You failed to infer that x could be any real number. So, so there are two possible cases here. One of the cases that you should have thought is, and that which was very obvious for all of you, was that x is an odd number, which you all inferred correctly. That okay, x could be 3, 5, 7, so on, because 5 times odd is odd. However, you should have also looked at the possibility that x could be a fraction. Now, can you type in the chat box and tell me what could be, yes, Shrinkla, you're correct, that x could be 9 by 5, right? X could be a fraction. For example, I've taken x as 1 by 5. If you take 1 by 5 as x, you'll still get an odd number. And this is a very, very important inference. And this is what I'm talking about, because you just thought you're just thinking in terms of integers, and that is why you're making this mistake. Since x could be a fraction also, you obviously you will not get the answer from the statement 1. That's very obvious, because we don't know anything about y. But while analyzing statement 1, you should have made both these inferences, that x could be 3, 5, 7, these kind of numbers, or x could have been 1 by 5, 11 by 5, or 9 by 5, these. Okay. If you don't make this inference, you will end up making a mistake. You'll end up marking the answer as B or C or something like that. Okay. So I hope this is perfectly clear. Now let's look at the second statement. The second statement is x minus y is an odd number. Okay. Now, if x minus y is an odd number, what can we infer about x and y? Can anyone type in the response and tell me what will be x and y in this case? If x minus y is an odd number, what kind of values? Give me two values, if possible, where x minus y is an odd number. A lot of you ended up marking the answer as B. So when you did that, what was going through your mind? Okay, Jyoti is saying 1 even, 1 odd. Shrinkla 7 minus 4 is equal to 3. Correct. But is there any other possibility? Again, keep in mind that we made an inference in the starting that x and y are real numbers. So they can be integers, as you're showing 5 minus 2, 8 minus 5, 7 minus 4. Yes, you're correct. Sukanya 1.2. Yes, now you're thinking in the right way. This is what I wanted you to think. That the case one could be that they are both integers, right? One must be even, the other must be odd. And in this case, x plus y will be odd. But the second case, now that you're writing it correctly, is that both of them can be decimals also, right? Like, for example, I took the case of 0.2 and 1.2. In this case also, you are getting odd. As you can see, x minus y is odd. But when you add x plus y, you're neither getting even, neither getting odd. So you can notice that you're getting two different answers. One possibility is that they're actually odd. The other possibility is that they are neither even nor odd. Since you're getting two different answers, that is why you'll say that even statement 2 is not sufficient and your answer cannot be B. So I hope this is perfectly clear, guys, why you made the mistake in this statement 2 while analyzing statement 2. Those of you who marked B as the answer, you only thought about case 1 and never thought about case 2. Okay. And even when you combine both these statements, statement 1 is that x can be odd or it can be a decimal, as we inferred. And from statement 2 also, we are getting that x and y could be integers or they can be decimals. Now tell me, after looking at these two statements, they are in front of you. Can we answer our question? Can we figure out whether x plus y is even or not? I've opened a yes or no poll. You can mark your answer in the poll. Yes, I can see people are marking no. And that is the right answer, guys. Understand, even after combining, we can never be sure whether x and y are integers or decimal. They could be, if I add them up, they could be even, they could be odd, basically, sorry, they could be odd, or they could be neither even nor odd, as we saw in statement 2. So even after combining, we won't be able to give the answer, and hence the correct answer in this case will be option E. So did you see, I gave you a very simple question. All of you said this is a 600, 650 level question. But I hope now you understand how even a simple question can trick you. And trick you in such a way that all of you will get the wrong answer. So that is why I was emphasizing so much and telling you the importance of making the right inferences, writing down everything in the starting only so that you don't make the mistake. For me, this question again is a 650 level question. I would not deny it. It's not a 700 level question because the only main thing that you need to keep in mind is to make the right inference. And that is what I want to show you out here, that whenever you solve a question, you should always do a little bit of analysis, that if I marked an answer, what did I do wrong? Where did I go? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? So those of you who marked the answer as B, okay, your concepts are in place. You know your concepts. That's my opinion, that you know your concepts well. But where you're faltering is that you're not being able to do the analysis properly and you're making the wrong inferences. You're not even considering all the cases because of which you're making a mistake. Those who are marking C or those who are marking A or D, I believe that your concepts are not so much in place because you're not doing the full analysis properly. Okay, and you're not even sure that because if your concepts were in place, then you would have at least chosen B as the right answer, not C, A, or D. Only those who would have marked E, though none of you did, would have all the four things in place. And this is the way we believe that you need to perform your analysis for each and every question. And you know it's tiresome because you cannot do it. And that is why we do this analysis for each and every question in our course. We look at each every question, we create options in such a way that we know what kind of mistakes we'll make and we track it properly. And so should you. You should track it to understand what kind of mistakes are you making. Are you making the wrong inferences every time? Are you not considering the cases? Because over a period of time you will be able to see a pattern. So there could be a few students here who, for example, may only make silly mistakes most of the time, so you know what you need to fix. But unless and until you don't you don't write your takeaways, you don't know where you're making a mistake, you will never be able to understand where you need to do well. Okay, so I hope this question was an eye-opener for you, and whatever you have learned in mind, keeping that keep this whatever you have learned while solving the next question. I'm sure, I hope you can see the next question here. So I'm bringing up the poll also. Try this one out, but make sure to be very careful. Do your analysis properly and then mark the answer. Another 15 seconds, guys, then I'll end the poll. I would request all of you to mark the answer. It's okay. Once again, say the same thing. It's okay if you get it wrong. In the GMAT also, you won't be able to skip any question. So mark what you think would be the best answer. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, so I can see 43% of you marking the answer as C. Okay, and I can see 57% of you have marked the answer as E. Okay, good. So what do you think about this question, guys? What do you think is the difficulty level of this question? How did you find the do you find this very difficult, easy? The last question help you think properly? Okay, so Kanya is saying 600 level. Okay, easy. Okay. Again, according to me, this is a 650 level question, especially for those who understand the difficulty level. Those who have done this the analysis properly, they will find it very easy. Here also the main crux is to do the pre-analysis properly, and let me help you understand why. Now, the first thing that you need to do is keep this in mind that when you're solving a question on unit digit, what you need to do is focus only on the unit digit, right? So we should ignore the rest of the digits. So what we can do is we can write this expression, what is given to us, as directly like this. So we can ignore 43 or 435, 3451. We can ignore the 345 and we can ignore 985 and just write it like this because we just need the unit digit to solve the problem. Okay. Now tell me, what can be the nature of x here? Here it's just given that x is a positive, x is an integer, right? So what do you think is the nature of x in this case? Okay. Anyone else who wants to put in the poll, please do so. What do you think is the nature of x in this case? Okay. So the good thing is that all of you saying that it should be all of the above, which is absolutely good. That is what I expected from you, that you should be able to do it. Any one of you who would have thought while solving the question that x is a positive, negative, or zero, then you would have fell for the trap. You would have made a mistake while solving the question. The idea is, if x is, it's given that x is an integer, you should be open to all kind of integers. That means x could be positive, x could be negative, x could be zero. So it is all the above, which is very good. Now, keeping that in mind, that x could be anything, can you tell me, if I ask you this question and you can type your response in the chat box, what will be the unit digit of 5 to the power something? I'm not telling you what that something is, but what do you think will be the unit digit of this? Anyone? 1 or 5, okay. Anyone else? 5, Sakshi is saying 5, okay. 5 for all except for 0, okay. 1, 5 or some decimal, okay. That's good. Now you're all thinking in this, most of you are thinking in the right direction. So whenever you are given what is the unit digit of 5 to the power something, you should ask yourself, what is this something? Is this something a positive integer like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Or is it something like 5 to the power 0 or 5 to the power 0.5 or something like this? Unless and until you don't ask this question, if you don't ask this question, you'll make a mistake. Because in this case, if the power is 0, or if the power is say some fraction or decimal, in that case, the unit digit is never 5. Okay? And it's very important to keep this in mind, that the nature of the power will determine what is the unit digit. So don't always assume that, hey, if it is given 5 to the power something, it will always be 5. That is a wrong inference that you're making. You should always look at the power. Okay? Now, keeping what I've told you in mind, can you tell me what will be the unit digit of 1 to the power something and 6 to the power something? Again, I'm not telling you what this something is. But what is 1 to the power something? Let's talk about this first. Okay, Jyoti is saying 1. Good. Anyone else? Okay. Yes, it's absolutely correct. Sagnik, you're also correct. That if it's given 1 to the power something, it will always be 1. You don't need to worry about the power. What about 6 to the power something? What about 6 to the power something? Come on, guys, please participate. Okay, so Kanya is saying 6 or some decimal. Okay, good. Anyone else? Will it always be 6? Okay, Ananya, you need to think a bit carefully. I just told you, right? That, and again, Ananya, Sakshi, think this way, that I haven't told anything about the power. I don't know what this power is. So if the power is, say, a positive number, like integer, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 6 to the power something is always 6. But if it turns out to be a fraction or it turns out to be a 0, then it will not be 6. So 6 to the power something will depend on the nature of the power. It could be 6, it could be something else. Okay, so I hope this is perfectly clear, guys. You should keep this in mind because this is the main takeaway of this question. This is a common mistake that people make. They always think 5 to the power something is 5, 6 to the power something is 6. Don't do that. Always look at the power. Now, in this case, once you make this inference, you are able to draw this inference that that 5 to the power x, the value will depend on x. And in this case, you don't know what x is, right? We don't know the nature of x. So x could be 0, x could be positive, x could be negative. That is why, since we don't know the nature of x, we will not be able to find out the unit digit of x, unit digit of this expression, basically. And since we are not able to find out the unit digit of this expression, the correct answer in this case will be option E. Okay. And if you still have any confusion, I have here two cases in front of me, which you can look at and understand why the answer is CBD. For example, if x is 0, in that case, the unit digit of 5 to the power x would be 1, 6 to the power 2x will also be 1, and obviously 1 to the power 32 is 1, so you'll get 3. If it turns out, if x is 7, in that case, the unit digit is 5, 6, and obviously 1, so you'll get 2. So those of you, 43% of you marked the answer as C. Whoever marked the answer as C assumed x to be a positive integer. That is the mistake that you made. And write this as a takeaway. Make sure that you never forget this. Okay. So those of you who marked answer C, you know your concepts. You know 5 to the power something is 5, 6 to the power something is 6, and all those stuff. But you're not making the right inferences. You've forgotten you do not consider the case when x could be something else apart from an integer, right? Those who marked ABD, I believe that your concepts are not in place, though nobody did marked ABD, thankfully, which is good. So that means you know some of your concepts. Okay. Only those who marked E ensured to keep this in mind that x could be anything. And if you have done that, then that's really great. You are now thinking in the right direction. So my final takeaway from this question is you need to avoid making incorrect assumptions. Don't just look at x and think that if x is an integer, it has to be positive. Always keep in mind if it's just given integer, it could be 0, negative, or positive if nothing is explicitly mentioned. Also, in case of 5 and 6, especially when you're dealing with unit digit, don't just jump to the conclusion that the unit digit will be 5 or 6. Always check the nature of the power and then mark your answer. Okay, so I hope it's perfectly clear, guys. Now, let's move on to the next question. Now, this is a slightly different question here. There's a different kind of learning that I want to give you. But first of all, try it out, and then I'll tell you the reason behind this question. Once again, you have 2.5 minutes to solve this. Another 30 seconds, guys, then I'll end the poll. Once again, please mark your answers, those who haven't done so. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Anyone else who wants to put in the responses? Okay. Okay, so what I can see here is that all of you, those who have marked the answer, have marked B as the correct answer. Okay. Once again, I won't say whether it's a correct answer or incorrect answer. But let me ask you a very simple question. How many of you solved the question by any of these two methods? Again, let me bring the poll. How many of you used method A and how many of you used method B? Just one sec. I bought the wrong poll. Just one sec, guys. Let me bring the right poll. Just one sec. How many of you used method A and how many of you used B to solve the question? Okay, great. Okay, so I can see that 88% of you, in fact, 89% of you used values to come up with the answer. Okay, which is fine. But the reason I gave this question is to basically talk about the art of taking numbers while solving questions. Okay, I'm sure a lot of you, while solving a question, may have wondered, can I take values and solve this question or not? Or you're confused whether you should take values to solve question. How many have you been in this situation where you look at a question and you wonder that, hey, can I take values to solve this question? And if yes, how do I decide whether I can take values or not? If you fall in that category, mark yes. Where you look at a question and you start wondering whether you can take values or not, and those kind of things come in your mind. If you're that kind of a person, then please mark yes. If you're never confused, then that's fine. You can mark no. Okay. Anyone else who wants to put in the response? Are you that kind of person who looks at a question and wonder whether we can take value to solve the question or not? Sometimes you're sure what you need to do, and sometimes you're not. If you're that kind of person, you can mark yes. Okay. So I can see about 75%, even a majority of you basically face this dilemma that whether I can take values to solve the question or not. Or if not a dilemma, then you think about it. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a simple way in which you can take a call in most of the questions whether you should take values or not. Now, this is not the only way. Let me add a disclaimer here. This is not the only way of deciding it, but it is one of the most efficient way to take a call very quickly whether numbers can be used or not. Okay, and to help you understand this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few general statements. Okay, look at these three statements. The first statement is what is the remainder when n squared is divided by 4 when n is even. Second is what is the unit digit of this expression when x is a positive integer. And the third is what is the median of this expression where a is an integer. Now, when you look at a question, the first thing that you need to do is look at the options. Just make sure that cannot be determined is not one of the options. The reason I'm saying this, if cannot be determined is one of the options, then it is ideal not to take numbers and solve the question. To be safe, don't take numbers to solve the question because there is a chance that you might miss out some cases. Okay, so when you're solving a question, you look at the question, see the options. If there's a cannot be determined, don't try anything unless until you're really confident that your math skills are awesome and you will still make no mistakes. Then it's a totally different thing. But in general, don't take numbers. Now, let's say the cannot be determined is not in the answer options. Like in this case, I have 5 different options, right? Then in that case, look at the question stem carefully. Okay. Notice that in questions like these, where it is given what is the remainder, what is the unit digit, or what is the median, here, this clearly indicates that I will definitely get some answer. Answer will come. It has to come because they are asking for a definite answer, and cannot be determined is not there in the answer options. So I'll get some answer. Once you see these two things, that the CBD is not there and the question is formed in this way, then all you need to do is look at the constraints and choose numbers based on these constraints only. So for example, if for the first question, if I want to find out the remainder when n square is divided by 4, I'll just look at the constraint. The constraint is n is even. So my job is to choose a number which is even, square it and divide it by 4 and I'll get my answer. Okay. In the second question, it is x is a positive integer. So all I need to do is choose a positive integer and put it in the expression and get my answer. In the third case is a negative number. So I'll just take a negative number, put it, substitute it in the values and find my answer. Okay. So what you need to do is just do a simple 3 check. See, is CBD there? If it is not, if it is there, don't use numbers. If it is not there, then look at the question whether it's a definite, whether they're asking for a definite answer or not. If they're asking for it, you need to choose numbers. Now, how do you choose numbers? You choose number by looking at the constraint that is given to you. In this case, as you can see these 3 constraints, choose numbers within these 3 constraints and you'll definitely get your answer. Like for example, in this question, you can notice CBD is not there. The question is asking you what is the remainder. Okay, now see how quickly you can solve the question. I've started solving the question. I looked at the answer option. I saw what is the remainder is given. I looked at the constraint. The constraint is it should be a prime number greater than 3, right? So my job is to take a number that is a prime, that is prime and greater than 3. So what I can do is I can simply choose say in 5, it's a prime number greater than 3. I'll substitute it in n square plus 23, get a value which is 48, and I'll simply divide it by 12, and I'll get my remainder. That's it, and I'll mark my answer as option B. It's that simple, and it will hardly take you 30 seconds to solve it. And this is risk free also because you did all the possible checks that you need to do, and you don't need to worry about anything else. Okay, and again in the exam time, if you feel that hey, I'm still doubtful, you can check a few more cases like I've shown here, but you don't need to. It's a sure short way. You just check whether CBD is not there, check if the definite question asked or not, and then take numbers based on the constraint. You do that, you'll always get your answer and you'll save a lot of time. So I hope this is perfectly clear, guys. Please mark yes if this is perfectly clear. So the learning and takeaway from this question is, while solving a question, just check whether cannot be determined is given or not. Look at the question stem and then look at the constraint. Do these things, solve the question, get your answer. And that's it. Thankfully, all of you got the correct answer. But in the exam time, now you won't be left wondering whether you're doing it the right way or not. Okay. And I'm going to show you a few more cases where I feel it makes sense or it does not make sense to take numbers. Okay. So here comes the next question. Keep all the learnings in mind so far and then try applying it in this question also. I'll bring up the poll. Another 15 seconds, guys. I would encourage everyone to mark the answer. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so you can see 90% of you have marked the answer as D, and some of you have 10% of you have marked the answer as E. Okay, now tell me, let me bring up a poll here, just one sec, very quickly. How many of you solved the question by taking value in this case? Kindly mark yes if you did that. Okay, so I can see that 60%, 67% of you, 70% of you, in fact, took values to solve the question, and 30% of you did not. Okay, that's fine. Now, those of you who took values to solve the question, okay, and even those of you did not, uh, how many cases did you consider? Just one sec, let me bring up the poll. Did you consider just one case, or did you consider more than one case? So, bottom of the poll. Okay. Anyone else who wants to put in the response? How many cases did you consider? Just one or more than one? Fine. So I can see that if all of you have marked the answer as more than one, which is absolutely good, very good that you were able to think in this way. So let's start by understanding the question stem very quickly and see whether we need to take solve this question and what's the best way to solve this question. Well, we can see that in this question we are given that x is equal to y plus 3. Okay, and we need to find out uh, which of the following must be even in this case, right? So we need to know out of these five options which will be even in all possible cases. So whatever be the value of x and y that we take, that will always give us even, right? So that is the inference that you should be able to draw, that I don't care what x and y is, but whatever be that, when I put it in the answer options, one of the answer option will always give me the even value. Okay. Now, keeping that in mind, you should also notice the pattern out here, that in this case also one of the answer will always be correct. Okay, that's one inference. So this is similar to the question that we were discussing before, what is the value or what is the remainder. In this kind of question also, which is a must be true kind of question, you can use values to solve the question. Okay, if you're comfortable without values also, that is totally good. But since this is a discussion about whether you can take values or not, well, the answer is yes, you can take values, but you have to be very careful here. Okay, and what do I mean? What do I mean by saying careful? When I'm saying careful, what I mean is that you should be careful about what the kind of values that you choose for x and y. Now, in this case, do we know the even odd nature of x and y? What do you think? Do we know what is x, what is y? Anything about x and y at this point of time? You can type in a response in the chat. Okay, Ananya is saying y could be 2, 3, 7, 13. Okay, so see, what I believe is that we should never take numbers randomly. I want to think a bit more and then come up to an inference. Okay, so what I do is I ask myself, okay, I don't know anything about x and y yet. Do I know anything about the even odd nature of x? Nothing is given. I just know that they are integers. So Shrinkla, so Kanya, you're right that if it's an integer, it could be positive, negative, 0, and Shrinkla, you're right, either one of them is even. Might even you are correct that one is odd, one is even. So what you can do is you can think in this way that x could be either even or it could be odd because nothing is given, right? So take both the cases. Think in this way. Let's say if x is even and x is odd. there are two different cases. Once I take x as even, what will happen? What do I get as y? If x is 6, for example, it's even. Notice y will be 3, right? And it's odd. And if you take x as odd, which is 5, if you put it in x is equal to y plus 3, you'll get y as 2, which is even. So notice that the nature is different. That is one thing that you need to keep in mind. This is one way of thinking. Okay, if you want to take numbers. If you're very good with the concept, if your conceptual knowledge is really good, then what you can do is you can simply write x is equal to y, x is equal to y plus 3 is x minus y is equal to 3. That is one way of writing it. Okay. And once you write it in this way, you will be able to infer that since this is odd, one of them must be even and the other must be odd. That is another way of thinking. This is absolutely correct. But at the end of your inference, when you're defining what you need to do, you should be able to infer that when x is even, y is odd, when x is odd, y is even. So that means you need to consider two possible cases. And this is how you need to decide the cases, that you don't miss anything. Once you know the cases, it's up to you. Either you take numbers the way I have written here, 6, 3, 5, 2, or you write even, odd, and solve it. I don't have a problem what you want to use. But as I told you, I was talking about taking numbers. That's why I'm taking numbers and showing it to you. So you can take 6, 3, 5, 2. You can take some other values also. And once you take it, you just plug in these values in each and every option and check in which case are you getting even in both the cases. Okay. And also while checking, make sure that you don't do the full check. So for example, look at option 3. In option 3, when I put x equal to 6, y equal to 3, I was getting odd. Now, once I'm getting odd, I don't need to check the second case. Why do I don't need to check the second case? Because if I check this, because I need to find even. And if in first case, if I'm getting odd, I don't need to check the second case. Notice only in the fourth case am I getting both even. Okay, so in this, so you can definitely say that the answer in this case will be option D. Okay, Swati is saying why can y be 0 here? Yes, y can be 0 here. That's not a problem. You can if you take y as 0, x will be 3. So y 0 means y is even, x equal to 3 is odd. So you can definitely take it. There's no problem in it. So those who have any confusion, keep in mind 0 is an even number. I've seen people having confusion regarding this also. 0 is an even number, so you can take 0 also. If you want to simplify your calculation further, even 0, 3 will work. That's not a problem. But I hope you understand how I'm trying to take the cases. Okay, I'm making sure that I don't miss out any case, because if I miss out any case, I might end up marking the answer as A, B, C, or E. One of you did mark the answer as E, so maybe you missed out on some case. Okay, so the learning and takeaway here is that since there are only two possible cases you need to check, you can take numbers to solve the question. If there are a lot of cases to check, we'll have to think whether we should take numbers or not. Okay. And as far as the reasons for making a mistake is concerned, thankfully almost all of you got it correct. But if you're if some of you mark the answer as E, and if someone else was thinking of some other answer, those who did not put in their responses, one of the reasons for making a mistake is you miss out on case. Especially those of you who would have ended up marking the answer as A or B, which no one did, which is a very good thing. That is because you're doing an incomplete analysis. Okay, there's always a chance of making a calculation mistake, and this is the only reason because of which I suggest not to take values. Because see, while we are doing these calculations here, we may end up finding the wrong value, and if we end up finding the wrong value, we may end up getting something. Say instead of even, we might end up getting odd, and that is another reason for making a mistake. Okay, and obviously if you don't know the concept of even and odd, then obviously you'll end up marking the wrong answer. But the idea here is the main crux of this question is while taking values, don't just put random values. Your constraint is given. You can see the constraint. Okay, based on that constraint, like in this case, I was given x is equal to y plus 3. Use that constraint to come up with the both cases, x even, y odd, x odd, y even. Once you have both the cases, you'll never get the wrong answer. Okay. Keeping this learning in mind, let's solve one last question on even odd, and then we'll solve a few questions on prime and divisibility. Okay, try out this one. Okay, guys, another 15 seconds. Those who haven't put in your responses, please do so. They've already spent about 3 minutes in this question. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so what I can see here is that 67% of you think the answer is B and 33% of you think the answer is A. And you took slightly more than the usual time than you should have taken. So, did you find this question difficult? If yes, what difficulty did you face here? Kindly put in your response in the chat. What was the problem that you faced here? Do you think the question was difficult? Kindly put in your response in the chat box. Okay, Maiti is saying choosing numbers. Okay, fine. Taking proper cases to deduce between A and B. Okay. In fact, my first question was about this only. I was about to ask you all, how many of you did you take basically numbers to solve the question or not? So I've added a poll here. Do mark yes if you're trying to solve this question using numbers. Okay, I can see almost all of, in fact, every one of you tried solving using numbers. Okay, 17% of you did not. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's discuss this very quickly, and I'll help you understand what you need to do. Now, notice that even in this question, you're asked which of the following must be an even number. So even this is a must be true kind of question, which means that you can solve the question using values based on the constraint that is given, right? And what is the constraint that is given here? It is given to us that a square by b cube is an even number and a and b are positive integers, right? Okay. Now, let's do some analysis here. And before doing some analysis, let's look at a very simple question. And this is again, forget about whatever is given in the question statement, look at whatever is given in the box. So if I ask you this question, that when, so if you're given a fraction such as x by y, okay, and you know that x by y is even, what can you infer about x and y? What can you infer about x and y? You have 4 options. Think very carefully and then answer, because this is the main crux. If you understand this, you will be able to solve this question very easily. X by y is a fraction, it is even, okay? What can you infer about x and y? Any more responses? Okay, I'm ending the poll now. So what I can see is that 75% of you are saying that when x is even, y is even or odd, and 25% of you think both are even. Now, again, those who have marked A, this is a very common mistake that people make. What they do is if they think that if x by y is even, they think that x and y both are even. That is incorrect. So maybe you need to brush up on your conceptual knowledge a bit. What you can do is you can write it like this: x is equal to y into even. What this does is, this helps you clearly see that x will always be even. Why? Because y into an even number will always give you an even number, right? So the inference about x becomes really easy. Now, as far as y is concerned, what you can do is you can think in this way, ki, hey, the nature of y is not affecting my result out here, right? Y could be anything out here. Even if y is odd, x will still be even. even if y is even, x would still be even, right? So y is actually not affecting x in any way. So it could be either even, it could either be odd. And if you face some difficulty in thinking in this way, then what you can do is you can take very simple numbers. I always remember these two examples, always, so that it helps me and never, again, I am used to it, but I know these two simple examples to always keep in mind what can be the value of 5. So you can see even 6 by 3 is even, and 4 by 2 is also even, and you can notice if y here is odd, y here is even. So this will help you understand very clearly that if x by y is even, then that means x will always be even and y can be either even or odd. Once you are able to make this inference, and if you are done with, if your conceptual knowledge of even odd is really good, you should be able to make this inference in maybe 10 to 15 seconds, because that is the basic that is taught in even odd. Once you make this inference, you can apply it in this question. You can see that this is also a fraction, and I know a and b are integers, so I don't need to worry about a square b cube. All I can say it's a fraction which is even, so that means the numerator, which is a square, is even, which means a is even. As far as b cube is concerned, compare it with y. Y was what? It was even or odd. So you can infer that b can be either even or odd. Now notice how making this inference has given you the cases that you need to create. Now you know that there are two possible cases. One case is when a is even, b is even. The second case is a is even and b is odd. Okay. So the most important thing that you need to keep in mind, the question was, the solution isn't lengthy, believe me. The problem is when you're trying to think of cases, because you're not used to making such inferences, you end up taking random numbers. And I'm not doing that. I'm not taking any random numbers. I'm just making my inference first. That's my first step, to decide what number should I take. Okay. Now answer this question. I know that A is even and B can be even or odd. But in this question, does it make sense to use values? What do you think? Write your response in the chat box, please. Think carefully and answer. Should I take values to solve this? I know my cases. Come on, guys, any response? Even if you're wrong, that's totally okay. But think, I can take values, but will it make sense to take values? Okay, Shrinkla is saying taking values is time consuming. Why do you think it is time consuming? Why do you think? I want that answer. Why do you think it was time consuming? You're right, it's time consuming. But why did you, what made it time consuming? Maiti is saying now not required. Hey, even in question number 4, it wasn't required, but I still took it in question number 4. And I'll tell you the reason. See, in question number 4, when I was looking at the options were very simple, right? Very simple expressions. It was easy to solve them. But in this case, when I look at the answer option, there are a lot of powers involved, right? So if you take values and you're not good with calculations, what will happen is it will become a lot of time consuming. Okay. So in this case, it makes sense to just write it as even, or take two cases. You know A will always be even and B can be either even or odd. So these are two cases. And instead of finding the values, I just focus on the even odd nature, nothing else. So for example, if I'm looking at second expression where there's a square involved, I know that even square will be even. Even square will be even and even into even will be even. So I'm not calculating anything. I'm just making inferences to come up with the answer. Okay. So that is why it's best in scenarios like this, where the expression is very have powers or complicated. It makes sense to simply just use the general method to solve the question. You just take even odd nature and figure out in which case you're getting even in both the cases. Okay. So that's the idea here that you need to keep in mind, that you can take numbers here also, you'll get your answer. But while deciding whether you need to take a number or not, make sure to look at the answer options and then take a call. It might be possible that the expressions are so complicated that you might have to do a lot of calculation, and that's not worth it. So using a conceptual knowledge here will be much more better. Okay. So the learning takeaway here is that I'll put it in a very simple way. Okay. Saipawan is saying may miss out few cases. See, Saipawan, we won't miss out any cases if you do your pre-analysis properly. Like in my case, I did the pre-analysis properly. I knew that A has to be even, B has to be even or odd. Now, once you make that inference, you can take any number. That's not a problem because you'll not miss out any case. You can take A even, any even number. Say you can take A as 2 and you can take B as 3 and B as 5 and solve the question. You can. You'll never miss out any case. You'll get the correct answer. But the pre-analysis is important. So if I have to simplify it for you, what I'll say is when you're solving a question, look at the answer options. In general, look at the answer option and see if C cannot be determined is there. If it is there, use the general method as I've told you. If CBD is not there, then see if it is a must be true or a what is kind of a question. That is what I told you, right? But here also, while solving the question, you do your pre-analysis, you do everything, and while choosing the numbers, take a call that whether it makes sense to put it in the options or not. For example, if the numbers that you have chosen, they're easy to work with to get the answer, then use it, not a problem. But if you see that, hey, if I put in the values, I have to do a lot of calculation, then it is better to use the general method. And when I say general method, what I mean by that is you simply solve the way I've shown you by taking even or odd, the usual method that we use. So use the numbers only when you see that putting in the answer option is worth it. Otherwise, you'll be wasting your time. This question can also be solved under 2 minutes. All you need to do is first make the inference that A is even, B is even odd, and then use a general way to solve it. And one important thing is this might seem a bit overwhelming, but believe me, with practice, what will happen is this will become very intuitive. So people who score Q49, Q50 or Q51, they take these calls instantly after looking at the question. Okay, they read the question, they see what is needed, they look at the answer option, they take a call whether they need to take a number or not. Or sometimes after doing the inferences, we take a call whether we need to take a number or not. Okay. Now, keeping everything in mind, try and solve this question. Again, be very careful. It's not necessary that you need to take numbers to solve the question. You may not need it. So decide judiciously while solving the next question. Another 15-second, guys, then I'll end the poll. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay. So 56% of you think the answer should be B, But I have a few C's, D's, and E's. 11% of you think the answer could be C, and another 11 think could be E, and 22% think the answer should be D. Okay, so tell me, what is the difficulty of this question? Did you find it difficult? What do you think of this question? Was this question difficult? Okay. Swati and PLS saying 650. I think this is close to a 700 level question, because from the responses also we can see that people have ended up marking a lot of wrong answers. If you're able to solve it, if you got the correct answer, then that's good. I'm going to tell you what the answer is. But before that, I would again would like to discuss a few things before coming on to the right answer. Now, in this question, as you can see, it's given that it simply asks that we need to find out whether the remainder is less than 75 or not. And we are simply given an expression that is 15 times n plus 3. Okay, and we are dividing it by 90. So what you need to do is you need to ask yourself, that do we know anything about n or not? Now, in this case, nothing has been given about n, no information at all. Okay, so now tell me, you have solved 5 questions so far, you're in the 6th one. If nothing is given about n, what can you infer about n? What kind of values can n take? Anyone? What is the nature of n? Integer or fraction realm? Yes, Jyoti, okay, that's the right word that I was looking for. Swati, you're also correct. That if nothing is given in the question, okay, then it's safe to simply assume that n is a real number. Okay, do not make any other assumptions. In fact, you don't need to make any assumptions at all. You could have simply left it there, said, okay, it could be any number possible. So that is all I know. So let me move on and try and do my analysis. Okay, now, before discussing the solution, I want to give you some conceptual learning here. We notice that when we write 15 times n plus 3 by 90, we can cancel 15 in the numerator and denominator and write it as n plus 3 by 6. Okay. Now tell me, is this correct, what we have done here? Let me bring up the poll, just one sec. Can we do this? Yes, no. I'm cancelling out 15 and writing it as n plus 3 by 6. Is this correct or is it not? Okay. Okay. So I'm ending the poll now. So from what I can see is that a majority of you do know that this is correct. You have marked 71% of you have said that it is correct. 29% of you are saying that it is not, which is okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 simple examples to help you understand that this is perfectly okay. And this is a very good learning when solving questions on remainder. So make a note of it if you want to. Now, what is the remainder when 5 is divided by 2? If this is a simple question given to you, obviously I'm not looking for an answer because I know you know the answer. The answer in this case is 1, right? When you divide 5 by 2, the remainder is 1. Easy. Okay. Now, what is the remainder when 10 is divided by 4? Well, if I divide 10 by 4, the remainder that I get is 2, right? Because 4 into 2 is 8, so the remainder is 2. However, what if I cancel 2 in the numerator and denominator and write it like this? In this case, the remainder that I get is 1, right? So in this case, I'm getting it 1, right? So the mistake, is there any mistake here? Because 27% of you said, 29% of you said that I cannot do this. I in fact showed you the answer, unfortunately, but can you tell me what if this is not wrong? Why is it not wrong? How do I get the original remainder here? Ideally, when I'm dividing 10 by 4, I should have got the remainder as 2, right? But since I'm cancelling 2 here, I'm getting the remainder as 1. So if you want to get back the original remainder, you simply need to multiply back the factor that you have cancelled it with. This is one simple learning that you need to keep in mind. Okay, so if you want to simplify an expression while finding a remainder, you are free to do it. Do it, that is not a problem. But make sure that whatever you are cancelling, you multiply it back in the end to get the final remainder. Okay, and also check whether the remainder that you're getting is less than the divisor or not. That's a simple check that you need to do. Okay, so in this case, I'm cancelling 15 in the numerator and denominator, right? So after cancelling it out, whatever remainder I get, I simply need to multiply back 15 and get the original remainder. That's all. Okay, so this is a very simple, neat trick that you can keep in mind while solving divisibility questions. Now, let's come back to the statement with this learning in mind. Now, in this question, it is given, the first statement is that n is a prime number. Now, tell me, should we take a few random numbers and check the remainder? Or should we should we do something else? What should we do here? You can type in your response in the chat. Should we take 2-3 random prime numbers and check it? Anyone? How did you go about solving this n is a prime number? What did you do? Do you take random numbers to solve it? Okay, Maitri saying you took random numbers. Okay. Anyone else? Come on, guys, participate. So when you saw n is a prime number, did you simply discard the statement saying, hey, it's a prime number, let me move on to the next statement? Or did you check 2-3 random numbers? Okay, Shrinkla tried 6n plus 1, 6n minus 1. Good. Anyone else? You did the same. Sagnik, yes. Okay, when you say Jyoti, you did the same. Did you do 6n plus 1, 6n minus 1, or you just put random values? You put random values. Well, my point that I want to make here is that I've told you I will never put random values. I'm not going to do that. I will, because that's risky. Sometimes you may get the correct answer, but GMAT knows that as a student, you have a habit of taking random values. Okay, if you're not taking it, Jyoti, you did not take it very good, but don't do that if anyone of you have did it. Okay, because that's risky. So it's better to think, what kind of prime numbers do I need to worry about? Okay, well, we know that prime numbers can be even, right? That's one of the prime numbers. That's a very special case too. Okay, prime numbers can be odd also. But even in odd prime numbers, there is a catch. The catch here is that 3 is the only odd prime number which cannot be written as 6k plus 1 or 6k minus 1, right? 2 and 3, we cannot write it in the form of 6k plus 1, 6k minus 1. So if I have to consider cases, okay, I'll have to consider 4 different kinds: even prime, odd prime, and odd primes which are of the form of 6k plus 1 and 6k minus 1. Because this ensures that I am taking all possible type of primes to check the answer. Okay, that way I don't need to worry about random values, whether I'm missing out in any case or not. That is why it's very important to have a strong understanding of the concept and also knowing what values to take. So Shrinkla, you took 6n plus 1, 6 minus 1, which is very good, but it's important to check 2 and 3 also. Okay, because they cannot be represented in the form of 6n plus 1, 6n minus 1. So once you check these 4 cases, you can be sure you know all the type of values that you need to check to get the remainder. Okay. Now, if you want to use values now, you're more than welcome to use it, like 5 or 7. In this case, I'm using 5 and 7. You could use any other value. Or, oh, Shrinka, you did take 2 and 3 also, then that's very good. Then that's absolutely great if you took all the 4 cases, because these 4 cases will definitely ensure that you know the different kind of prime numbers, remainders that are possible. Now, remember, I cancelled 15, right? Now my expression is n plus 3 by 6. Keep that in mind. So when I put n is equal to 2, okay, the remainder that I get is 5, right? because 5 by 6 remainder is 5. But my original remainder will be 5 into 15. I need to multiply it by 15 to get 75. Okay, I hope you remember this, because we cancelled 15. Similarly, we can check when n is equal to 3, what is the remainder? Well, 3 by 3 gives 6, which the remainder is 0. That means the real remainder will be also 0. You check a case of 6 and minus 1, which is 5. In this case, notice 8 by 6, the remainder is 2. Multiplied by 15, you'll get 30. And check one last case, which is 10 by 6, which is 4, which will give you a remainder of 60. Now notice, in these 4 cases, out of in 3, 5, and 7, the remainder is less than 75. And notice very carefully, the important word is less than 75. And here, in case of 2, you are getting 75, which does not fall in this category. So if somebody asks you, is the remainder less than 75? Will you be able to say yes after looking at these 4 cases? Can I say yes? The remainder is less than 75? Can I say that? Anyone? Can I say that the remainder is less than 75 after looking at these 4 cases? No, we cannot. That's very important. Sometimes what happens is we look at 75, we see 75, and unconsciously we think that this is sufficient. A lot of you who marked D may have made this mistake, and people make this mistake because they think, hey, 75 is there, 75 is here. They don't focus on the word less than 75, and they end up thinking one statement 1 is sufficient. However, it is not, because we are getting 2 different cases. We don't know whether n is equal to 2 or greater than 2. That is why this statement is not sufficient, and hence your answer cannot be A or D. Okay, so it's very important for you to read it very carefully, check the question once again to make sure that you're not missing out on any case. Okay, and once again, no random values, please. Practice methodically and you will be able to do it properly. The second statement is easy, and it's easy for those people who know how to solve quadratic equations. And this is the reason I gave you this question, to tell you why studying just number properties first might be a problem. Because there are a lot of students I've seen who don't know quadratic equation, and if in this question they might get stumped. Hey, n square plus 3 and minus 3 and minus 10, what should I do? Okay, but all you need to do is simplify it. So 10 is 5 times 2. So I can write it as n square minus 5 and plus. So I'm splitting this minus 3n as minus 5 and plus 2n. Then I'm taking n into common, creating my factors, and I'm getting 2 values, minus 2 or 5. Now here also some of you may discard this statement. I saw a few answers as E. Those of you who discarded this thinking, hey, I'm getting 2 values, maybe I'll get 2 different answers. Okay, so let me mark my answer as E. You did not do your full analysis. What you need to do is you need to check once. You need to put these values. So we have n plus 3 by 6, right? So you put minus 2 and check what are you getting. You're getting the remainder as 1 here. You multiply it by 15 to get the original remainder, which is 15, which is less than 75. Keep a note of it. When I put n is equal to 5, okay, you'll get the remainder as 2, and the real remainder would be 2 times 15, because 15 is we need to multiply to get the original remainder. Notice in both these cases, the remainder is less than 75. And since there are no other cases possible, we can confidently say that statement 2 is sufficient, and the correct answer will be option B. So I hope this is perfectly clear, guys. Those who marked E, you ended up not checking it. Those who marked C, they had n is equal to a prime number in their mind hovering somewhere. They thought, okay, I'm getting 5 here and it's a prime number, so maybe this has to do with that, and then ended up marking C. Those of you marked B, well done, good job, but this is the best way. This is the right way to solve a question. If you have to look at the learning and take care, I would say those who have marked option A, they did not look at the case of 2 properly. They did not see that properly, because of which they did incomplete analysis and end up marking A. Those who marked B obviously did everything properly, but I still believe, based on the comments that I saw, that you need to stop taking random values. Try and make sure that they are all proper values that you need to take, the ones that will ensure that you're covering all the cases. Those who are marking C, as I told you, you did your analysis properly, but what you did was you did not consider case 2 proper, statement 2 properly. You saw there are 2 values, and maybe you thought, I need to take a prime number, let's mark C, because that is what is given in statement 1. Those who marked D, again, you made all the mistakes possible. You forgot about case 2, and you did statement 2 properly, but you made a mistake in statement 1. and who did E, I believe that a few of you marked E. What I think is that you need to work on your analysis a lot more. You need to read more properly to ensure you don't miss out on cases. Believe me, with if you do these kind of analysis, you'll know where you're faltering, and then you will be able to take corrective actions. Okay. My seventh and the eighth question are together, okay, in the form of 7A and 7B. The first statement is common for both the questions. Okay. The question is, when an integer n is divided by 40, we get remainder as 9. This statement is valid for both the questions. Keeping this statement in mind, solve both A and B. Okay. I'm bringing up the poll for only question number 7A. Okay. I'll take your responses for 7A first, and then I'll take the responses for the second question. So for now, just mark your answer for 7A, but solve both of them. I'll give you 4 minutes to solve. Okay. But mark your answer for 7A first. I'll take that response and then I'll ask you to mark your answer for 7B. Okay, guys, you have another 1 minute. So make sure that you solve the second question also. I'll ask for the responses after a minute for the second question. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, guys, I've taken your response for the first question. Now, I would want you to, I'll bring up the poll once again. I'll give you just 30 seconds to mark the answer for the second one, okay? Not more than that. So, very quickly mark your answers for the second question. Okay, and the 10 seconds. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, so I'm sure you must have noticed that in the previous question, that is 7A, the responses were between B, C, and E. And here in this case, as expected, this was what I had actually expected, that there will be some confusion between B and E. So most of you have marked the answer as B. Now, a very simple question before I start the discussion. How many of you used values to solve the question? Kindly mark yes if you used value to solve the questions. Kindly mark yes if you used values to solve the question. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, so I can see 56% of you used value to solve the question. Now, what did I tell you? When you're solving a question, what are the 2 to 3 things that you need to see? The first thing that I told you to check was whether the option has cannot be determined in it or not. Now this has cannot be determined in both your questions. So ideally, you should not have taken values to solve the question. And this is specific to those people who made a mistake in this question. I'm telling you, even those who did not, you were lucky, believe me, but there will be certain questions where you will falter. If you see cannot be determined, don't go for the route of choosing values. You'll end up making a mistake. And let me explain why. Now, in this question, obviously, we are told that n divided by 40 gives us a remainder of 9. Now, as I told you, I'll discuss a bit of theory so that it becomes easy for you to understand. So tell me, how many of you know the additive and multiplicative rule of divisibility? How many of you understand this? Kindly mark yes if you know it, and no if you do not. It's okay if you don't. I'm going to just briefly explain it to you. Okay. Okay, I can see there's a 50-50 split. So let me very briefly and make you understand with very simple examples. These are not really tough concepts. Okay. Now say you want to find out the remainder of say 3483 plus 9842 by 7. Okay. How would you do it? You can type your response in the chat box. How will you solve a question? It's a very simple question. There are two numbers and I need to add and divide by 7. So how will you proceed doing it? Will you add both the numbers? You can type your response in the chat box. What will you do? Okay, Shrinkla is saying I'll split it and then find the remainder. Okay. Anyone else? Guys, it's okay even if you get the wrong answer. That's absolutely fine. Okay. So basically, if I have, what you can do is there are two ways to doing it. One is you add them up. Okay. You add them up and find the sum and divide by 7. If you do that, you'll get your remainder as 4. That's one way. Okay. The second way, someone is here saying split. Okay, that's fine. Maybe it's correct. Well, just looking at the last two digit 83 by 7 and 42 by 7 is not the correct way. Okay. What you need to do is, because the divisibility rule of 7 doesn't say you need to look at the last two digits. So that's slightly incorrect. The best way is to split it. What you do is you split them into two different parts. You find out the remainder of 3483 by 7. You find out the remainder of 9842 by 7, and then you add it up. Okay. Well, as far as addition is concerned, I would say I don't have a problem with both the methods. That's absolutely fine. You can use both of them. But keep in mind, remainders can be added after finding out the individual remainders. That's the additive rule of divisibility. But when it comes to multiplication, think about it. Would you want to multiply these two numbers and then find the remainder by 7? No, you would not, right? What you would prefer is, once again, simply split it, find out the remainder of 4834 by 7, find out the remainder of 983 by 7, okay, and then multiply it. Now in multiplication, I'm getting 12. Is this my remainder? Can anyone tell me, is this correct? My remainder I'm getting as 12. Is this okay? If it is not, why it is not? If it is okay, then you can simply write, yes, that's totally fine. And if you think if this is not correct, why is it not correct? Okay, Jyoti is saying 12 by 7, Savnik is saying no. So I'm sure you must have understood that 12, what you need to do is you need to check, right, whether the remainder is less than the divisor or not. In this case, 12 is not less than 7. So that means we need to divide it again to find out the final remainder, which would be 5. Okay, so in case of multiplication, you can find out the individual remainder, but after finding the individual remainder, okay, you need to multiply it. Okay, multiply it, and then you divide it by 7 to get the answer. Okay, multiply it, get the remainder, and if it is greater than the remainder is greater than the divisor, then you divide it again. That's a simple thing. That's the two rules that if you have in mind, you will be able to solve this question very easily. You don't need to take any numbers, especially when you have a cannot be determined in the option. So my first question was that when n is divided by 40, the remainder is 9. I need to find out what happens when it is divided by 15. So to solve this question, you need to know the formula n is equal to q into d plus r. And it's a very basic thing, right? When you divide a number by a divisor, you get a quotient, you get a remainder. So in this case, we can write our n as q times 40 plus 9. Q is the quotient. I don't know what that quotient is. I know I'm dividing by 40 and the remainder is 9. Okay. Now in the first case, when n is divided by 15, just think a bit, how do you solve it, right? What would be the best way to solve this question? Okay, should we take values for q? 1, 2, 3, like some of you might have taken the numbers because some of you responded by saying yes. Well, you can do that, but I'm telling you that taking random numbers, again, especially in case of CBD, is not a good approach. You will end up making a mistake. If not in this question, then in some other question, but it's coming for you. So the best way is to solve it methodically using the additive and multiplicative rule that we learned. So notice there's a multiplication sign here and addition sign here, right? So split it. Split it into 3 different parts like this. Okay. Find out the remainder when 40 is divided by 15. You'll get 10, right? Now, do we know the value of q? No, we don't. So I don't know what remainder will I get when I divide q by 15. I don't know that. So I'll simply write it as r. I'll get something. I don't know what that is. Okay. And when 9 is divided by 15, the remainder is going to be 9. So ultimately, I'll get 10 times 9 plus r. I'll take the multiplication sign which is here and the plus sign here and write it like this. And see, only by doing this, I can tell that, hey, I don't know the value of r. And since I don't know the value of r, I will not be able to find out my answer. And hence, the correct answer in this case will be CBD. And see, this was all explanation. I explained it to you. That was why it took a lot of time. Otherwise, if you see, if I'm solving it methodically, all I'm doing is just this step shown here, 10R9, nothing else. And I'm getting my answer in less than 30 seconds. Okay, so when you see CBD, don't be tempted to take numbers. Because, see, you can do that. But there is a chance that if you take wrong values of Q, say, for example, you take a value, for example, Q is equal to 15, you may take that. Okay. In that case, you'll get the remainder as 9. You may take Q as 0 also. In that case also, you will get the remainder as 9. So some of you might end up marking the answer as be thinking that, hey, the answer has to be 9. I'm getting 9 both the cases. Okay, but you may end up missing a case where something like when if you take Q is equal to 1, you'll get the remainder as 4. So there are different values also possible. So how many cases will you check? It does not make sense to check so many cases. And that is why whenever you see CBD, there's always a chance of making a mistake and you should not go about doing it. Okay. Yes, Agnik, you can do it. I'm not denying. That's what I'm saying. In case like this, you can take different dividends, check it. If you're getting a different answer, you can mark CBD. That's fine. Okay. Jyoti, this is the last question. We'll end in another 10 minutes. Okay. So Sagni, you can do this. But think about it. In this case, you are getting different answers. Very easy for you. You could have said, hey, CBD is the answer. Very good. Let me mark it. But then what will you do in this question when n is divided by 20? Say, because when you're taking different values, you're not using concept. You're using random values without using the concept. So in this question, the second question, I'll proceed in the same way. For me, if I'm doing methodically, I'll write n is equal to 40q plus 9 and I'll divide it by 40. Okay. I'll again split it up because I'm doing it methodically. I know my remainder of 40 by 20 is 0. I don't know by q by 20, so I'll write it as r again. I know my remainder 9 by 20 would be 9. Now in this case, I can very clearly see my final remainder as 0 times r, which will be 0, plus 9 will give me 9. So I know in this case, my answer, even if you don't know the value of r, will always be 9. But now say, in this case, if you take random values of r, random values of q, okay, the way you're taking it, can you be sure that the answer will never be anything else? Can you be always sure that, hey, if I'm getting 9 in 2 to 3 cases, I'll always get 9? You cannot be, right? In the previous question, it was easy. You were getting different answers, so CBD was fine. But here, unless and until you see it for yourself that 0 times r is 0, only then will you be able to say it confidently, okay, hey, r does not matter in this case, so my answer will always be 9. But taking random values, you'll always carry that risk at the back of your mind, thinking maybe I might have missed some case where I might get a different remainder. Okay, so that is the reason we suggest not to take values whenever CBD is in the option. If you're very confident that you will be able to make that inference by taking a value, go ahead. Nobody's stopping you. So in final, what I will say is I'm going to show you just a simple flow chart to make you understand how I usually solve a question. And I do all this intuitively with over a period of time, even you will be able to do it. So whenever you see a question, right, you always read it properly and jot down the constraints and information. You see what is asked and you briefly look at the answer option. Don't spend too much time on the answer option. Now, why do I ask you to do these steps? I ask you to do this step is because if you jot down the constraints properly, you will never miss out any information. You'll never make any assumptions. At the same time, you'll always make sure that you write the right inferences. And I showed you that if you're not writing it properly, the inferences, jotting down the constraints, you are making a mistake. It is also very important for you to jot down these mistakes. Make a note of it, track it. Okay. Why do I say write down what is asked? Because then you will be able to decide what approach do you need to use. If it's a must be true question, CBD is not there, you know you need to take options. Okay. You need to use numbers to solve the question. Looking at the answer option has the same purpose because it helps you decide whether you can take a number or not. Only when you're done with these 3 steps, you start your pre-analysis. You think, okay, this is the information given to me. What can I do with this? Okay. And this helps you decide, make sure that you don't miss any case. Okay. And then while finding out the right answer, you can take a call whether the number can be used or not. Okay. Because now you know what is being asked. Now you have looked at the answer option. Now you have done your analysis. So you know the various cases that you need to take. And you can take a call whether if CBD is not there, I can use an answer or not. Also, one final very important step is when you find out your answer, do check it if exactly that is what is asked in the question or not. But the reason I'm saying this is because if you don't check that, you'll make a silly mistake. If you say make a silly mistake, you'll make or get the wrong answer. And then after checking, then mark your final answer. Now, this might look like a complicated chart, but it is not. The thing is that the first 3 step is something which you do while reading the question only. You're reading it, you're jotting down, you are making sure that you have everything in mind. You do your analysis, at the same time you decide whether you need to take numbers or not. And then after solving, just check it, do a check. The final thing that I want to say is that you track The important thing is a lot of people maintain an error log, right? They think that, but the error log that they maintain is only about what questions they are getting correct, what questions they are not getting correct in terms of topics. That is not the right way to approach it. Finding out which topic you're weak at is good, but you need to also see what are the practical application-based mistakes that you're making. Okay, so make a log of that also, whether you're making a silly mistake, whether you're missing out information in most of the questions. Okay, that is one way of doing it. If you think that's a big task for you, you can use our platform also if you want to, because we track all this automatically for each and every question. You don't need to worry about tracking all this thing. You study in a sequential manner, and you solve questions. We at the backend track everything for you, and we tell you where you're making the mistake. So it's up to you. If you can do the tracking on your own, I would suggest make a tracker, not just of topics, but of all these things also. Because after solving 150 questions, you will be able to see a pattern. Or you can use a platform. I'm telling you, the platform is really good. The concepts, the questions have been really properly selected to ensure that we give you the right feedback. Okay. So I would strongly recommend you to try out the free trial once. If you have any questions, write to us at this email ID. I'm going to share you the PDF also, where the email ID and the phone number is given. You can talk to us, you can write to us at the same time, and we are more than happy to help you. Okay.